Have you ever felt like your attention, your autonomy, and even your ability to imagine an alternative future has been systematically stolen from you? That creeping feeling has a name. The Gnostics warned of invisible leaders called the Archons. They're extra mundane gatekeepers who control material reality and keep human souls trapped in ignorance. But today, the Archons are not invisible. They are the billionaire elite with names that you know. Musk, Bezos, Zuckerberg, Thiel, Trump, and so on. These are not just rich men. They are operating a 500-year-old colonial project, now running at digital speed and planetary scale. Their algorithms and platforms are designed to extract not just your labor, but your consciousness itself. They are the Demiurge's administrative powers, using agnoia, or ignorance, as a force of nature to maintain control. This is your required knowledge, your gnosis. So stay with me, because once you can name the modern Archons and map out their colonial matrix, their power over you begins to dissolve. There are Archons among us. Let's talk today about the Oligarchs as demiurgic colonial powers. This is the material war that is being waged on our spiritual reality. So let's make this an examination of Gnostic modernity. Kind of like a neo-Gnostic is a term that I've been hearing go around, and I do not exclusively subscribe to this. I like to point out a lot of times my home base is Mesoamerican and Mayan cosmology and magic. And there are actually a lot of friction points between the Gnostic worldview and the Mesoamerican worldview. However, there are also very, very clear points of convergence that are astonishingly important if ignored. And let's not ignore those anymore, because that would show greater implications for just how similar these two different cosmological worldviews are, yet they do meet in the middle in very important ways, especially when we are talking about applying these things to our modern way of life. I think first we have to accept, when putting these things in the context of our modern way of life, is understanding the time period in which we live in. And I, as a historian, can tell you that basically every generation thought it was the last generation, right? And I don't have some kind of inherent apocalyptic thinking. But as a historian, or just a well-read human being in the 21st century living in the United States, I think it would be ridiculous to say we do not live in unprecedented times, particularly when addressing these more Gnostic themes of surveillance, control, tyranny, the blending of man and machine, of inorganic and organic, the colonization of certain ideas, lands, peoples, whitewashing, and the deliberate erasure of cultures or various forms of thinking in favor of a homogenized way of thinking. These all are Gnostic themes. And they are very much themes that the globe is going through, regardless if everybody's cosmology reckons some kind of Gnostic kind of simulation, or these tyrants in charge of things. It's quite literally just not debatable, as we're going to see. Let us examine the Gnostic warning first and foremost. We have a theme of ancient wisdom versus digital control. And here I have this image. It's easily found online, but it was done by one of the best occult artists in the world that's alive today, Jose Sabogal. So I want to give him credit for this image because a lot of people have spammed it. But it is such a capturing depiction of the Gnostic Demiurge. So it's almost like a crime not to use it, but I do tip my hat and give credence to the artist. So the Gnostics warned about Archons, right? And these are essentially some kind of cosmic gatekeepers that want to keep humanity in a certain place through the use and leveraging of material systems, but also weaponized ignorance. And I always like to find the Mesoamerican parallels here, because two separate halves of the world separated for thousands of years throughout human history. And if we can find similarities, perennial points of convergence, then we are dealing with something of like how when atheism argues to us that none of this is real, it's all just imaginary. It's like, no, I think the implication suggests there's something more to it. Doesn't mean it's literal, but it doesn't mean that we should be taking their words for it, especially when some of these like leading atheists, right, or like Sam Harris, who is a absolute kind of like shill for a lot of the totalitarian stuff that's going on right now, or Richard Dawkins, who is found in the Epstein files to be very close with Epstein. Sam Harris was in the files as well, fun fact. But in the Mesoamerican cosmology, it's not really until the Spanish arrive where this word is mentioned, which is Castellan, which seems to be a bastardization of Castile or Castilian Spain. But in the books of Chilam Bilam, the Castellan are also a race of spirits, not just these conquerors. They're like the guardian spirits of the colonizers that rape, pillage, do all the bad stuff that colonizers do. And there's a very distinct separation between what the Castellan are versus other kind of like antagonistic figures in Mesoamerican cosmology, such as like the Lords of Xibalba. They're not the same. So the native peoples had a different recollection of the metaphysics behind these kinds of spirits. I also like to point to the Nahuatl philosopher Contextli, as he is most certainly a forerunner to René Descartes, and where they had a similar theory. He essentially had the same theory that René Descartes had, only I believe it was 200 years prior, where he says, kind of like, I think, therefore I am. But Contextli goes a step further, and he says the only truth that we can know is that we do exist because we think. However, we also know that because we have questions, we are ignorant. And in fact, we are very ignorant about the world. So ignorance is almost kind of like a default programming when emerging into the physical universe. And this kind of ignorance, it's almost kind of like who's pulling the strings kind of philosophy, which is most certainly very Gnostic and somewhat nihilistic. And through this weaponized agnoia, weaponized ignorance, power is maintained through the extraction of human creative and spiritual energies by the Archons. Modern Archons operate at digital speed and planetary scale via their algorithms, surveillance, and all kinds of AI and, pardon me there, all of the other tech gonads that are coming out, that they're always trying to leverage to kind of control the markets. Even the entire financial system is starting to show just how much of it is fabricated. When we are talking about colonizers and we're talking about oligarchs, mythologically, across all cultures, I have to hand it to the Demiurge of Gnostic mythology. The Demiurge is the ultimate colonizer. A brief lowdown here. Yaldabaoth's Kenoma, he is the blind creator god, fashioned reality as a prison out of the deficiencies of creation, which this is the Kenoma. This is colonial logic that is mirrored in this. Erase entire cosmologies and claim absolute authority, which is exactly what this figure does. And the Kenoma is in contrast to the Pleroma, which is like essentially the realm of truth, where all the true godly ideas reside. But let me just say this. I do not believe that material reality and physical existence is naturally evil, where there are some like hyper Gnostics that like they believe it's all just like pointless and stuff. I don't believe that. I think there's just enough beauty in the world to recognize that's not the truth. It doesn't really jive with native philosophy much at all, except kind of Conte-Coltsley's opinions and maybe one Maya city-state, which is a little inside baseball, but largely these themes are very useful, but an absolutist point of view isn't really going to help us out. But this Konoma kind of jives with Silicon Valley principles, which promise to organize our information, and it's oftentimes just counterfeit gnosis, if you will. It's just counterfeit like quality information too. It's counterfeit products. It's a lot of hollow stuff. So these tech platforms, they provide us false knowledge in some regards that deepens the material prison while promising escape. And there's plenty of examples like that we'll get into. So let's name some of these jackasses. So like, I'm throwing some labels on here really just to kind of have some mythological fun. I'm not making a cosmology necessarily out of these guys, but like Archon of Spectacle. Who is this? It's got to be Donald Trump. I mean, I've never seen the appeal for voting in Donald Trump. Like, I could have told everybody was a con that a reality TV star would run. I'd be like, this sounds like a con. It sounds like it's more than just like a guy who thinks he can do better at presidents at the presidency. He's arrogant enough. But I could tell that like you hire an entertainer to capture the public, and it's the people behind that really benefit off of that. As we can see, he's been doling out tax cuts and making all these private deals for his billionaire friends. So he really is the Archon of Spectacle. He is that front-facing person. Yes, does he have executive decision? Yeah, but he was more like the lead generator for a collective archonic agenda. So Trump maintains power through his mimetic chaos. His narratives are reality-distorting spells designed to keep populations engaged in theatrical combat rather than systemic awareness. MAGA is an invocation of the colonial matrix. Now, the richest man in the world is the false transcendent Archon, Elon Musk, who promises escape from our material world and our material limits via colonizing Mars or terraforming Mars, and Neuralink, which is one of his technologies. I believe it's like virtual reality stuff, while deepening material control. He is the richest man in the world, after all, at least on record. His algorithmic chaos on X/Twitter ensures that actual collective liberation remains unthinkable. It keeps the kind of dumpster fire in the town square continuously burning through rage bait. Extraction is a birthright to him, from the emerald mines to the colonization of consciousness. I'm talking about emerald mines in South Africa, which his family has ties to. Despite like he's typically seen as like the world's like most successful entrepreneur, but he was born rich. Like, he had some fun facts, like he only had $100 in his checking account at a given time, so he wouldn't feel tempted to spend it when he was coming up through his tech career. Notable kind of financial discipline there, but he came from a rich family and he would have died rich regardless. A lot of these people would have. So when we are measuring up their achievements, we're really just hearing a lot of their propaganda and not really seeing the deeper context and the whole story. The Archon of digital enclosure has to be Jeff Baldy Bezos. Amazon has enclosed the digital commons. It's a monopsony, not necessarily a monopoly, but a monopsony, which instills a digital feudalism that masquerades itself as service. Convenience is the perfected prison that erodes local community and self-sufficiency. Now, here's the thing. On this slide and in the article, just for the amount, because of word count and getting the point across. If you read my words, it may seem very like pointed. It may seem almost like I'm just like blacklisting these people. The thing is that some of these things provide actual service, and like our world would be lesser without them. The speed and convenience and efficiency of Amazon has done more good for people getting things done in the world than it hasn't. However, when they start to close in control, that's when it becomes a problem. For example, the UFC basically made the sport of MMA, even though it is most certainly not the only and never has been the only MMA organization, nor was it really the first. But it became a monopoly, and now the quality of the sport is dropping, because when you have a monopoly, there's less incentive to be doing a good job because there is no competition. So, I think something like Amazon benefits the world. However, giving it a blank check for all of its demands, now competition is supposed to be a good thing. And when you eliminate competition, you are fed gruel and slop. And you start to see that with a lot of Amazon ads and stuff and what's recommended to you. Now, the Archon that runs the surveillance plantation, Mark Zuckerberg, everybody's favorite broccoli boy to pick on. So the Zuck has been trying to create the metaverse, not just a conglomeration of the social platforms, but a complete replacement reality manufactured to, trap souls in a counterfeit pleroma. It's essentially a new type of digital real estate and a new place to corral people to sell them things, essentially. Kind of like how he did with Facebook. He corralled people into Facebook and then sold them out to ads. Again, there has been great benefits of social platforms. I'll be the first one to tell you that. Before social platforms, the only way to get your business or your product or anything that you truly believed in out there is you have to pay for promotion. Social media has made that, has democratized that to where you can start at least for free. So we should be kind of thankful for the pros, but we also need to check the cons at the door. And one of the major cons of social media, particularly the ones that Zuck has pushed, is a conversion of human intimacy into raw data metrics. Humanity as a crop to be harvested, which is exactly what he did with advertisements. This is a pacification technology that offers the appearance of autonomy within total control, if unchecked. Now, I will say, and I will give Zuck some credit here, that whenever Meta does something kind of outrageous with its terms and services, the public pushes back, and there is some kind of response that Meta does have. They still pull their surveillance and crap like that, but like at least they will roll back some things, and some censorship will be much more liberal. And there is a point of comparison to that. We're going to get to another Archon that recently purchased TikTok that is not like that at all. Is very totalitarian and will not relinquish its grip despite public backlash. But here are two other quick jackass Archons of architecture and as an intermediary. And that would be Peter Thiel, who is the nervous system of surveillance. His company Palantir is built to track and monitor while promoting anti-democratic vampiric capitalism through biological and territorial life extension. Research some Peter Thiel, and I'll have more about Peter Thiel. I'm going to do his whole Mayan astrology chart and put that up for people to just kind of like get the point across that this guy is really weird and really just wants to enslave you and I. He's a and then we got Hillbilly Eulogy, J.D. Vance, the Archon of Mimicry is what I wanted to call him. He's an intermediary who speaks the language of the colonized people. Colonized people. Hillbillies from Appalachia is like what he identified as. The common blue-collar worker. But he serves the interests of the oligarch of the Demiurge. Clearly, he's like the vice president. And he's like, look at me, I speak. If I speak it, you speak it, because we're common people. And we should like be voting for Trump, or we should be whatever. He tries to funnel common people philosophy into the grand agenda that actually doesn't serve. It actually enslaves the common people. And we have Larry Ellison, too. A lot of people actually don't know about him as much as the others because he's older, despite like all the Botox and stuff. He's in his 80s. And he recently purchased TikTok and has installed a lot of hardcore, like Christian Zionist, totalitarian things in there. Ridiculous surveillance. And he is essentially the record keeper of the Colonial matrix. Before Palantir, Oracle databases underlie the infrastructure of modern life. They are really like spying on everybody, and they have been for a long time. Military-industrial complex, the worst of them, to be quite honest. His private ownership of Lanai exemplifies the pure colonial impulse, turning territory into his own personal playground. And like he wants to limit free speech. He's been on record saying like, he is here to make sure that everybody's a good and orderly citizen, and any outcry or critique of any specified government will be like, chased down. As opposed to when the Gnostics were around, the modern colonial matrix of power is, I guess, could be divvied up primarily through these two ways. Because if I wanted to say political, economic leverage, all of that could be over here on the left with economic domain, just kind of like extraction through platforms and digital feudalism. But like the digital side of all the physical stuff. So like, yeah, they can take land and things like that. But by implementing this new digital real estate, they are essentially creating the land that gets populated and then taking it from the people. So again, it's replacing land theft. Then there's the epistemic domain, which is the control of knowledge and reality through algorithmic feedback loops. And this has been going on for a while, but Sam Altman of OpenAI essentially came out and said how, he said this last week, that the way that they see it is that they want to create a economy where knowledge is chargeable and billed as much as water or fuel, anything like that. Like that's the world that they see to come. Quick reminder, if you are watching this on YouTube, don't forget to check out the full article on my Substack, link in the description below. And think about becoming a paid subscriber to support my work, get access to courses on practical enchantment and other kinds of exclusive goodies. But here we have the 7 archonic functions that I just drew for this project here today. By no means are these the only archons in the world. We could throw in Sam Altman, like I mentioned. I think you could throw in Benjamin Netanyahu. I think you could throw in a lot of tech giants and aspiring people as well. In that entrepreneurial space, there's all kinds of people glazing like Elon and stuff like that to try and get into that billionaire club. And they are trying to become the archons. And the way they do is they benefit off the common people. A lot of this hustle culture stuff is really just kind of a fertile soil for aspiring archons. So I drew this chart just for some fun. The oligarchs here, their archonic roles and their primary mechanisms. And Trump is most certainly settler nationalism with reality spectacle, with a talent for mimetic chaos. Elon Musk represents false transcendence through robotics, the cyber trucks, terraforming Mars, so on. And that's where he gets his transhumanism and space escape, despite the funding for such a Martian project would bankrupt the planet. And we could just, like, I don't know, fix the planet for like a fraction of the cost. Bezos has us in digital enclosure, becoming a logistics monopsony and just endless consumption. The Zuck has us on a surveillance plantation with identity extraction and eventually creating a digital land grab, and then grabbing that from the people that try to do the land grab. Peter Thiel is ideological imperialism, and he is this surveillance nervous system to a almost a homicidal degree. J.D. Vance is a colonial mimic. He is the gatekeeper for the populist rage, the common people's rage, to get people riled up and related to them. And then we have Ellison, who is information enclosure, who has institutional databases and records. These are all archonic things to the T to control us. So what now? First step is knowledge is power, man. Liberation through Gnosis. And Gnosis is, the capital knowledge. The Archons have been named here. The Matrix has been mapped. Knowledge liberates what material power cannot contain. If you want to support my work, follow me on Instagram, YouTube, Threads, Facebook, and obviously subscribe to my Substack. Let me know in the comments below what you think, and stay tuned for more decolonizing spiritual